so much for joining us. It's great to have you here. Pestilential protocol, how unsecure HL7 messages threaten patient lives. We're going to get started. But first, we'd like to lead off with a couple of huge thank yous.
So I'd like to thank UC San Diego, particularly the Health and Computer Science and Engineering departments. Of particular interest is Dr. Kirill Levchenko. He was instrumental to the success of this project, getting us materials, helping out with technical aspects. So just a big thank you to him.
And also just a big thanks to Siemens. They were really great with our research, worked well with us, and a lot of our technical build up to this talk. So it's really been awesome considering, you know, a lot of people, vendors don't want to talk with security researchers, and that wasn't our case here, so we're really lucky.
And could I just ask for a final round of applause for our incredible speaker liaison team, Steve, Alan, all the rest of the guys. We could not be up here if it weren't for all of your help, so thank you so much. You guys are phenomenal. So just a quick disclaimer, we're going to be talking about the exploitation of some insecure protocols in healthcare and the consequences that could arise thereof. 2 out of the 3 of us are doctors. We care about patients. Obviously, please do not do any of this stuff at home. And then finally, if you have any aversion to blood or needles, there will be a little demonstration portion a little bit later that will involve both of those things. So you'll kind of get a sense of when that's coming up. Please feel free to kind of disengage if that's not something that would work for you. My name is Jeff Tully. I am a security researcher. I also moonlight as a pediatrician and anesthesiologist. I work at the UC Davis Medical Center in Sacramento.
My name is Christian Demeth. I'm an emergency medicine physician. I'm also a security researcher at the University of California, San Diego.
Hello, my name is Maxwell Bland. I'm a computer scientist, researcher, and graduate student at the University of California, San Diego as well.
So we are really interested in the intersections between medicine and technology, particularly how vulnerabilities in the technologies we use to care for patients are exploited to the potential detriment of our patients. We have presented on hacks of the 911 system before. We've done work in simulating out critical infrastructure attacks on hospitals. And recently we have done clinical simulations of patients who would present with hacked medical devices to show other doctors what it might look like if you had a compromised infusion pump or pacemaker. So those are our kind of areas of interest. In medicine, we very commonly learn from cases. We discuss stories, we learn new ideas and concepts. So I want to kind of bring you guys into a case with us today, this morning, in our super tiny hospital here in a back alley of Las Vegas. It's like 4 a.m., everyone's super tired. It's already been a very busy night. We've had a couple of strokes. We've had a heart attack or 2. We just finished packing up a gunshot wound and sending him to the trauma bay. And we've been told that there's a new patient in bed 7 who's coming in with some nausea and abdominal pain. And that's something that's a pretty non-specific complaint. Maybe has a history of a questionable buffet, maybe drinking a little bit more alcohol than he should, not drinking enough water. But as a physician, when you're given a simple statement like this, that's kind of what you have to start to work with. And we're trained to learn about a lot of diseases, and whenever we have complaints, we start to categorize them into possible conditions, illnesses, things that we might need to treat, some more serious than others, but with that simple 1-paragraph sentence, we're already going down an algorithmic process. And it's going to be important for us to be able to extract data that helps us narrow in on what might be going on. Now, in medical school, we learned that the most important element of that process happens at the bedside. This is the quintessential doctor sitting, looking over a child, you know, but we know that the reality of the situation is that the bedside of today is much different. And we depend on an incredible number of technologies to provide care for our patients.
So the first step to really understanding how a hospital works and understanding those technologies is to understand the data transfer that goes on in the hospital. The majority of hospitals actually use standardized protocols to ensure interoperability between various devices and software systems. HL7 is an example of that protocol. It provides a common language for these different devices. It's international, it's ubiquitous, it's used in a ton of hospitals, ton of software. What does it do? Well, it transmits data regarding orders, lab results, and generally what you'd expect a hospital data messaging system to carry. It's come in a few versions. The version that we'll be dealing with today is version 2. It's the most common version of the HL7 standard. It is plain text, pipe delimited, and you know what that means. Easy to run regular expressions on. Non-XML based. And aside from version 2, there's a newer version, version 3. Due to higher complexity of implementation, it's had a much slower adoption. It's pipe delimited, XML based, very similar but more complex. So this is an example of an HL7 lab result message. Really straightforward. You can see at the top there we have some metadata regarding the sending hospital, receiving facility, as well as the patient. And in this case, because it's a blood gas test, it's going to contain data on electrolytes, kind of what you'd expect. Now, why does this matter? This matters because HL7, well, has some issues. It isn't what you usually expect. There's no key exchange, there's no encryption at a standard level, there's no checksum, no verification of message stores, no authentication, nothing that you'd expect from a modern hospital patient health information, social security transmitting protocol. Seriously. And we're going to take advantage of this fact to build our attack today. But before we can tell you the technical details of the attack and build up those foundations, we need to get an idea of what we're working with. Here we've instantiated a budget kidney theft clinic. So on our left here, we've got two medical devices. This is a blood gas machine and a urinalysis machine. I'm not a doctor, so I'll let Christian explain that one.
They're pretty self-explanatory. So a blood gas machine just takes human blood, presumably, in small quantities, combines it with chemical reagents, and measures things that we care about in medicine. Things like electrolytes, what's your hemoglobin level like? These types of things this machine can do, and do it rather quickly. And then a urinalysis device just does the same, but for human urine. You put some urine on a strip, you put it in the machine, and it can calculate to see if there's a presence of things like glucose or signs of infection. So these are real laboratory devices.
Yeah. And when these devices run a test, they're going to take those results, typically transmit them to a lab information system. The lab information system is in the same room, it's used by the lab technician. It's what's going to associate orders with results, as well as decide which medical record system the results are going to be sent to. And that kind of leads into the next link in our chain, the interface engine and the electronic health record. The electronic health record is what the physician sees. So this is what they're going to do to use to make a diagnosis. It keeps patient information, encounter information, all the regular meetup sort of things. In between there, you see an HL7 interface engine. That's nothing special. It just ensures that the different versions of the HL7 standard being used across the hospital can interact with each other in a nice way, ensure that there's kind of this common language really is interoperable. Now let's get down to the meat. Let's talk about how you do this on a technical level. So what we're going to do is a classic man-in-the-middle attack. This is an in-band attack because there's multiple TCP sections that are instantiated repeatedly as orders send across the wire. The attack starts with ARP poisoning. For those of you without a strong networking background, what is the ARP protocol? It's what's used to resolve IP addresses to MAC addresses. It works in a call and response fashion. So a computer says, hey, who has IP address 10.10.10.10? Somebody off on the network says, oh yeah, that's me. You can kind of see where this might go wrong. The attacker computer instantiates a flood of ARP request responses saying that I am the lab information system, I am the medical record system, and so you know, the lab information system falls for it. And after this attack has occurred, the lab information system is going to think that the attacker is actually the medical record system and start trying to instantiate TCP connections with it. The medical record system is going to think that the attacker computer is the lab information system. Same thing. Now, that's just stage one. Next stage is a TCP packet injection attack. There's multiple ways you can do this. Some are more complex than others. Some are more efficient than others. One such approach is a forwarding-based approach that requires modifying packets as they stream through the attacker computer. It's a little bit more complex because you need to keep track of the TCP state machine between the lab information system and the attacker computer, and the same thing for the medical record system. Now, that takes, having done it twice now, around a couple hours each time I have to look at the finite state diagram and like burn my noggin over the sequence and acknowledgement numbers. A much easier thing to do is a more classic man in the middle. That involves instantiating two TCP connections for each direction of communication. So how does TCP work? TCP works by instantiating a communication between a client and a server. Now that the attacker computer is playing the role of medical record system, the lab information system is going to try to instantiate a client connection to the attacker computer. The attacker computer needs to be running a TCP server. So the TCP server does that. When it receives data from the lab information system, it's going to queue it up, and simultaneously, it's going to instantiate a client connection to the medical record system. While the data is in that queue, we can go ahead and modify it however we want, and a lot of the heavy lifting is handled by the TCP libraries. So you can see why this is a really nice approach to take, because it takes like 45 minutes and makes my job easier.
So let's do it. Let's kind of circle back to our initial case. We'll go back to the hospital. I think I'm going to check on this patient. He's that gentleman with the abdominal pain, and what I want to do is open up my electronic medical record and see if I can get some more information on him. And I don't work here very often, so I want to make sure I remember the password. Okay. So here's our electronic medical record. Obviously, my username is doctor, and my password is password. So I think I remember his name being Christian. I'm going to look up Christian. I think that's him right there. I'm going to pull open his encounter and see if I can get any more information from the chart. He's a 31-year-old guy, kind of the same story that we already heard. His heart rate's a little on the high side, but otherwise his vital signs look pretty normal. So I'm going to go check in with him and make sure that he's doing okay. Mr. DeMeff, hi there. I'm Dr. Tully.
Hey, what's up? What's up, Doc?
I'm sorry you're not feeling well. How can I help you? What's going on?
I've been at Black Hat and DEF CON I've been drinking a lot.
Okay.
And I just have a lot of pain. It started here in my belly, and nothing wants to stay down. I've just been barfing.
I'm really sorry to hear that. How long has that been going on for?
Like a day.
Have you had any fevers at all?
It's really hot outside.
Sure is, yeah.
I don't think so,
I don't think so, okay. Any blood in that vomiting at all?
Blood?
Yeah.
No.
Good, I just wanted to make sure of that.
Okay.
Do you have any other medical problems that you see a doctor for on a regular basis?
Kitty cats make me wheeze.
Okay. Do you take any medicine for that?
I had a puff for a long time ago, but not anymore.
Okay. So I'm going to take a listen to your heart and lungs, okay, and do a little bit of an exam and see if we can figure out what's going on.
Okay, Doc. You do you.
All right. So as Jeff and Christian are going through their beautiful, romantic stay away at the doctor's office, I'm going to introduce you to our tool, Pestilence, which is going to make this whole thing work. But before I do that, the news media and my publicist said that I need to look the part, and I said, hey, you know what, stereotypes are good. So I'm just going to put this on real quick. All right, do I look scary yet? Oh, just for the weather. All right, now that I look as scary enough for suburban grandmothers, I'm going to go ahead and launch Pestilence. So Pestilence, cute puppies, 1, 2, 3. Cute puppies, 1, 2, 3. Okay. And so this is our tool that we've written. What this is going to do is this is going to instantiate the TCP man-in-the-middle attack that I talked about earlier, and it's going to begin sniffing the packets as they flow across the wire. At the top there, you can see a victims list. This has a medical record number, first name, last name, and the order type. What this is going to allow us to do is it will allow us to select a victim. Oh, and they're just populated. So you can see that we have a couple of people. I'm getting a pregnancy test? What? We have a couple of people that have populated in a packet capture at the bottom left. You can see the order HL7 messages right there. The next step is to pick a victim, associate it with pathological payload, something that we want to infect them with. But I don't see Christian here, so we're going to have to wait for the orders to populate before I can really perform an attack.
You know, Mr. DeMeff, I'm a little bit worried about your lab work. Sorry about your symptoms. So I think I need some lab work to kind of help and see what's going on, okay? So give me a few minutes. I'm going to put in some orders.
Okay, I need a beer.
All right, so let's go back to my EMR and see if I can get some orders in for Mr. MF. Okay. That guy definitely seems like he is on something right now, so I need to make sure that we check his urine for anything unusual. There's my urinalysis. I'm going to send that out. And then I also just want to make sure that I get a nice check on his electrolytes as well. So let's do a little bit of blood work. Okay.
Oh, go ahead and click it and go to save and transmit.
Okay. Sorry, I'm really new here. I'm still learning the system. I don't work here very often. This place is really understaffed.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
And then if we switch back to Pestilence, we should be able to see the results populate live. And we will see a urinalysis order and a blood gas order for Christian DeMeth. Awesome. Now we can get to work. Let's go ahead and set the victim to medical record number 1. All right, Christian set to Christian DeMeth. Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. Inspiring.
That's pretty deep.
Very inspiring. Yeah. It's an inspiring tool.
Yeah. And so we can set the payload now. We could do a few things here. We could impregnate him, takes any negative pregnancy results, and turns it positive. I don't think that works with the orders that have been placed for him. We could give him an STD, but I'm sure he's got plenty of those. So let's do a DKA. All right, payload set to DKA. And now we're going to go ahead and execute. So now Pestilence is going to enter into waiting mode. When it sees the lab results fly across the wire, it's going to run a regular expression on them, substitute them for lab values that would be present in a patient suffering from DKA.
Are you serious here? Like, I have to draw my own lab? Like, this is how understaffed we are? This is ridiculous. I haven't done this since med school.
Wait, what did you say?
Nothing, Mr. DeMeth. I'm going to get that blood work started, okay?
Where's a nurse?
You're looking at him. We do it all here.
You're going to draw my blood?
Yep. Going to get this tourniquet on right here.
You said you haven't done this since medical school?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll be just fine.
I really do need a beer.
So how's your day going?
It's just starting.
See any good talks at Black Hat?
Yeah, some great ones. Ouch.
All right, all done.
If you missed that, I was going to make fun of him for a long time.
Do me a favor and hold on to that for me.
You're really understaffed.
I'll clean you off, don't worry. All right, good to go.
Just hold that there.
Medicine is an art, it's not a science. Sometimes you make a little bit of a mess. All right. That wasn't that bad, was it? I mean, like I was never there.
Excellent.
You guys, like, I'm a legit anesthesiologist. I do this for a living.
Don't tell any of his colleagues this happened.
That is the messiest one I've had in a really long time.
He's under pressure. This is stunt hacking.
All right. So there is the small matter of one additional sample that we're going to need to get from you.
What is this?
We're going to need a urine sample, if you don't mind.
Here?
Yeah, this is a hospital.
Like right now?
I'm a doctor. It's something I haven't seen before.
All right.
Whew.
It's really hard to move my arm. You guys didn't think we were really going to do that, right? Some of you out there. Can you hold that?
Yeah.
That's true. Okay. It's basically urine already. Okay. Here, Doc. Here's my urine sample.
Hey, thanks for that. Appreciate it. That doesn't look too good, but we'll get that run sample. You've been a great patient. I really appreciate it. You know, I'm just going to break the fourth wall here. There have been some incredible blackout talks, and I think people work incredibly hard. Have you ever seen someone literally bleed for their talk? Can we give this man a round of applause? So I'm going to need to get this to the lab. We are really understaffed. I'm going to need a lab tech.
Yeah, this presentation is pretty understaffed, so, all right. I also moonlight as lab technician. It's Dr. Bland to you. Jesus. All right.
Safety first.
Safety first.
Oh, I meaningfully consented to that blood draw.
How do you get these things on? They always really snap it. It seems so easy in the movies. TCB packet injection, plastic glove, latex glove.
It might not be your
You know?
size.
It might not be my size.
Here, I can do this part.
All right. So once we take the lab results over to the machines, the lab technician typically runs a few tests. So we're just going to put the syringe right into the blood gas analyzer. Make sure to select venous blood gas. And good. Analyze. All right. Cool. So while that is running,
You're in sterile. You can do this one.
yeah, I can do that. While this is running, all right. We're going to go ahead and grab a test strip out of our canister. Let's go ahead and grab that one right there. Make sure to get it all dipped and ready. Fizzed.
Take this out.
Wipe it off.
Take this guy out.
And set it in there. Just like that. We'll do a regular strip test on patient 1. Go ahead and start that up. Meanwhile, we'll go back to the blood gas machine, associate a patient number, and wait for that to run. So after these results populate, and we can see that they just did, a small bit of paper will print out just like this, giving us the results. And these results will then be sent to the lab information system for the lab technician to verify, associate with an order, and send to medical record system. So I see this. Need to rerun that. Okay, so while that's running, we're going to pay special attention to pestilence, and I'm going to send over the blood gas results for this order. Now, that is going to be in patient sample log, blood gas. This is the fun part because you get to see what an actual lab technician does. You can see that it's a hard job. Many, many years of experience. Pretty tough. All I'm doing here is saying which medical record system to send it to. Click OK here. And there we go. So I just sent the blood gas result, and it's a vampire. I mean, yeah, so we see that the sample has been sent across the system, and next we just need to run the urinalysis results. Seems like, get that out. So I'll go ahead and transfer this as well. Okay. Oh, all right. So this diagram of toilet indicates that pestilence was successful. So now we've effectively modified Christian's HL7 lab result messages and some Mountain Dew to look like a patient with DKA.
So let's go and check on those lab results I drew for Mr. Demef. I'm going to see if I can access those. This EMR is really slow.
Hard to see, too.
It's really difficult. This AV setup here at this hospital needs a lot of work.
No.
Yep. Sorry, I can't see her.
You know, I only sacrificed 3 people to the demo gods today. It should have been 4.
Where's that?
Procedures? Down second from the bottom.
Oh, cool. There we go. Sorry, I have really bad eyesight. All right, there's our patient. That's today's date. Let's see if we can click on that guy. That's a urinalysis with a really, really high amount of glucose in it. Some ketones as well. And let's pull up the other labs that we ordered on him. He has blood gas right here. So this gas is really concerning. He has a pH of 7.12. That is pretty low. PCO2 is low as well. He also has sugar that's so high it can't even be measured. So I'm pretty concerned about that, particularly the acidosis right there. Mr. Demef, your lab results came back, and I'm a little bit concerned that you may be suffering from a complication of diabetes called diabetic ketoacidosis.
That doesn't sound good.
No, I'm kind of worried about you. I think we need to start you on some insulin to get you feeling better.
All right.
Okay.
Do what you gotta do.
So while they're grabbing the insulin bag and setting that up, I do want to show you something. Now, in the OpenEMR, we have a couple of lab results. Let me just pull up the urinalysis result as well. We should remember these numbers because in a second I'm going to switch over to the webcam and show you what the lab technician saw. So you see here, pH 7.12, pick another favorite chemical and keep track of it. And then over there on the urinalysis side, we have several results as well, glucose 991. If we go ahead and switch over to the webcam and look at these pieces of paper that printed out, rip this off. Might be a bit, hopefully it's going to be able to see it. You want to hold that? Thank you. We can see, as soon as it focuses, that pH was 7.41, PCO2 is 36.7, PO2 is 40. These are the results of a healthy patient. Now let's look at the urinalysis results. Just print them out. Tried to print it out before, but I guess it did a partial.
Spoiler alert, it's Mountain Dew.
Yeah. These are, for some reason, it's, the demo gods have not been with us. I'm not able to, let me see if I can recall the results.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and get that insulin started, though, while we wait, okay? We are kind of not the best hospital, as you can tell. We don't have any IV pulls.
What?
Yeah, I want you to hold this for me really quickly.
So how long do I have to hold this for?
I'll secure it here very shortly, don't worry.
Okay. Do I get paid as much as you to do this? Because I do it myself?
Perfect. Well, don't worry, I'm going to secure it against him. No big deal. Let's get that going. Oh, there we go. Falling like a champ. Let's kind of just hold your neck like this. Let's see here.
Is this safe?
Yeah, I don't know. This is what we used to do before we invented IV pulls. Okay. Close? No?
Yeah, I feel the hydration.
Okay. All right, there you go. I'm going to check on you just a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So, if we look at the urinalysis results on the machine because they didn't print out properly, we see that we've got glucose at 100, SG at greater than 1.03, pro negative, Lu negative, call yellow. These are the results of Mountain Dew. So, yeah.
So I hung that bag maybe around 4:45, and about 15 minutes later, Christian suffered his first seizure.
That's not good.
10 minutes after that, he was unresponsive and continuing to seize, so we put a breathing tube down his throat.
No.
And at 5:32 in the morning, Christian suffered a cardiac arrest.
Oh, okay. All right, give it up for the demo team. That was pretty awesome. All right, I'm going to get a kick out of holding this to the rest of my talk. All right, so how did I die? That's what we're going to talk about. Remember, pestilence has pathologic payloads. So you can associate a target and give them a payload. What are the payloads? They are laboratory results that resemble a disease. Okay? And remember, the doc has a really hard job. I came in with abdominal pain. I wasn't feeling well. I was barfing. We showed you the list of things it could have been. It could have been dozens and dozens of different things that were ailing me. We had to do these tests to try to help us narrow that differential down. Well, when the doctor sees our payload that we injected, it takes what would have been this giant list of things and basically pushed them straight to the diagnosis of diabetic ketoacidosis. Now we're going to talk about that, so don't worry, that's a mouthful. But that's a pretty serious disease. We were able, because of these labs, to quickly go to a differential.
So diabetes is essentially a problem with insulin, and insulin is a hormone that acts like a key. It opens up a cell to receive energy in the form of glucose. In some types of diabetes, you don't have any insulin. In other types of diabetes, your insulin doesn't work. Diabetic ketoacidosis is a severe complication of diabetes where there is so much glucose or blood sugar in the blood and insulin is not working, getting that energy inside the cell, but the body begins to go into a state of starvation and generates metabolic compounds that can cause organ damage and progress to become very, very life-threatening. The treatment for that condition is to replace insulin. Insulin, as I mentioned, is a natural hormone and we need it to live, but it is also an extremely toxic medication. If you give insulin to someone who doesn't need it, you will take their normal blood sugar and you will drop it precipitously low, leading to heart attacks, strokes, or even death.
So, we're going to transition from that into talking about the CIA triangle in healthcare cybersecurity, okay? We know one of the sides of the triangle obviously being confidentiality. If any of you out there work in healthcare, you clearly understand that most of the time it ends up being the HIPAA hammer, right? We don't want to leak patient health information, we don't want to leak their medical records, etc. But despite our best efforts and the fact that this predominates the discussion of security in healthcare, we still suck at it. We hear this statistic that there's a hospital breach every day. We know that over 5.5 million patient records were leaked last year, despite us spending millions and millions of dollars trying to secure them. Let's move on to the next part of the triangle in healthcare. Availability attacks. These are most, I think, best exemplified in talking about ransomware attacks on hospitals. So when WannaCry hit the National Health Service in the United Kingdom, it affected 81 hospitals. Remember, these hospitals have to take care of patients that are having heart attacks, having strokes, patients that have severe infections, and people are going to go in for surgery. You can imagine that ransomware attacks take out huge swaths of that infrastructure and essentially act as availability attacks. We're working to prove that we think that harms patients. And we can use something in the science as an analogy. This is my favorite New England Journal of Medicine paper. And it asks a very simple question. What happens if you were unlucky enough to have a heart attack or an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest at the same time as a marathon was going on. All right? I think we can see where this is going. Have you ever tried to get across town when there's a marathon? It's a nightmare. Imagine you had a heart attack. What would happen? Well, they measured it. Measure people having heart attacks without a marathon, measure it with, see if there's a difference. They found a 4.4 minute difference in the time it takes your ambulance to get from your home to the hospital just because there's a marathon. They found that at 30 days, your chance of being alive was statistically lower if you had a heart attack during a marathon. We use this paper as the analogy of ransomware attacks in hospitals because we think these availability attacks subtly impact the care of very sick patients like strokes, traumas, and heart attacks. Well, many out there are like, what about the third part of the CIA triangle, integrity? And that's what we showed you today. Integrity attacks, or changing data from point A to point B maliciously, it was what we demonstrated today. And this doesn't get a lot of talk in healthcare security. We're always talking about ransomware attacks. We're talking about HIPAA. But what we showed you today is that we can incept into the minds of physicians the diagnosis that they then act on. And their action can be an insulin drip on a patient who doesn't need it. And when you give an insulin drip to a patient who doesn't need it, they can die. And you saw, because of the vulnerabilities of HL7, just how easy that was.
And I think the really interesting point that kind of makes our tool something special, aside from the technical capabilities and the attack, is the fact that we're not just injecting noise, we're not just injecting a bunch of numbers that a doctor would look at and say something's obviously off with the machine. It's an incredibly plausible result, and it's something that changes clinical decision making. And that's how data integrity attacks are a little bit different from those others, so that we can alter how clinicians care for their patients. Because we trust those technologies implicitly. This is a picture of my operating room. I need all of these different types of machines and systems to care for my patient. And even myself, with a little bit of a background and understanding in this, I still trust them implicitly, which is what we're conditioned to do in medical training.
So thus far in this talk, we've given you 3 strong foundations to work from. We've shown that this attack is possible. We've shown that the technical background is possible and demonstrated how you would do it. We demonstrated the clinical knowledge required to perform this attack. I hope that you can take away from this that it's not completely out of reach that an attacker can perform an integrity attack. The next natural question is, where do we go from here? What do we actually do about the fact that we can kill people just by connecting to an Ethernet port? It's going to have to be an interaction of hospitals, device manufacturers, and policymakers. The first thing we suggest is secure network deployment. We need to make sure that hospitals are educated, that their IT staff know what to do, they know about VLAN segmentation, and there's amped up security to make sure that an attacker like me in that black hoodie can't hide in a broom closet somewhere and connect to the Ethernet. The second major vulnerability is proper configuration. So having spoken from experience setting up this clinic, these systems aren't always easy to get operating together. Making updated systems where possible is going to go a long way towards mitigating this attack, making sure that encryption is not only accessible, but default and easy to get to, so that even an untrained IT staff can still encrypt their messages and make sure that patients can get treated safely. The third part is really looking into the future. We need to adopt more security-conscious protocols and ecosystems. Yes, we showed you an attack on HL7, but it's just one crumb of a larger healthcare insecurity cookie. The fact that HL7 is so prevalent demonstrates that hospital infrastructure as a whole is insecure. I think you can imagine why. These devices operate in emergency rooms. There's a distrust of updating. Serious pushes need to be made to go to protocols like FHIR, which has the option of being encrypted with TLS, and making sure that policymakers understand that security should be taken into account at every step along the long process of approval for these devices.
So we're going to leave you with some parting thoughts. Technology powers modern healthcare. Software and connected devices are as essential as antibiotics, x-rays, and surgery. Many new doctors have never used paper charts, radiographic light boxes, or written prescriptions on prescription pads. Without reliable technical systems, doctors today are nearly helpless in taking care of strokes, heart attacks, and trauma. And in some cases, like we demonstrated today, these systems can even be used to cause harm. Whether you like it or not, your code, your networks, your devices, they care for patients every single day. And that is so, so, so important to remember. Securing them, we think will save lives. And we're going to open up for some Q&A. The Lone Ranger.
Yeah, so in your demonstration, you did a man-in-the-middle attack to alter the HL7 messages. I was curious how susceptible these systems are to spoofed HL7 messages, and what would happen if, for example, it had received a spoofed lab result and then the real lab result came in. What sort of things happen there? And I have a brief follow-up question for the two physicians, which is, as physicians and security researchers, how have you seen or have you seen success getting other doctors to care more about security?
Do you want to take the first one?
To address the first question, I think that we definitely talked about this. We talked about the idea of submitting false orders. Certainly a sophisticated attacker could expand upon this system and infect an entire hospital. It's kind of scary to think about, but you could make orders for patients that didn't actually get the orders. You could tell the doctor that this patient requires a prescription that that patient does not require. So it's certainly possible to spoof these messages. It just needs to be done right to ensure that the clinical staff would respond in the way that you wanted to. Hopefully nobody goes and tries this.
And then to your second question, what can we do to get doctors to care a lot about this? That's a really hard thing. We hear a lot about this. Security teams are frustrated in hospitals because the doctors have this giant trump card they can pull out that says patient care, you're not a doctor, you don't know what it's like to take care of them. I need it to work now. I need the default password to be password or 1234. What we've seen is that when you show them what could happen, using things in language that they understand, and you take it from a concern about patient data security to patient safety, we've had some success in getting doctors to care. Because when you ask them the simple question, how reliant are you on your system, on your technological system to take care of patients, they say, very much so. And if I said, if that went out, would your patients be harmed? The answer is yes. That's the gateway into convincing them that they need to pay attention because this is no longer about patients' social security numbers. It's potentially about their safety and their life. So that's kind of the way you speak their language, teach them about patient safety and cybersecurity. So I know cyber. That's the way to do it.
But isn't that more on the hospital system and not the physicians themselves?
So the comment was, is that more on the hospital systems or more on the physicians? You got to get buy-in at all levels. Because guess who has a huge say in what devices they buy? The doctors. So if you let the doctors know that's important to take into consideration security controls in the devices that they buy, you're more likely to get that device bought for a hospital. In the back?
Yeah, Mike, with the non-secure protocols, I don't know how many of these are wireless.
Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped you. Why don't we go on the mic and then we'll get to you. Apologies.
Okay. Well, my question is there a version of HL7 that is not plain text and takes care of the RSA in itself, or you have to move that down to the network level and do that on a tunnel level? That's my question. Another question is, how do you do that end curses animation?
Okay, the end curses stuff is something that I threw together really quick. That was really fun. You can look into it. It's basically a coordinate system. You just say, put this string there, wherever, and then you can alternate, start timers, do all the stuff that you'd expect.
So you made that blood matrix thing.
Yeah, cool. Having some really gross constants at the top. Literally gross because they're dripping. The second question was, Can we implement this at the protocol level? Can we do a key exchange, something like that? And I think that's entirely possible. That's something that I've not actually seen in these standards, right? So even in FHIR, it has suggestion, it has the ability to be integrated with encryption standards, but the protocols themselves don't seem to offer any stringent verification, checksums, things like that, that might handle some validity checks, things like that.
Like there's no HL7S like HTTPS.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to trademark that.
First, amazing ASCII art, by the way.
Thank you.
The question I had, for a period of time I was in call centers and we handled sensitive information with older systems that couldn't communicate securely. And I think RAD networks at the time had kind of a protocol bridging mechanism where we could take a device and stick it into a protocol translator, and then it would just essentially provide, you know, an SSL tunnel. And when I was looking at these systems, I didn't know if they were wireless or, I mean, because if they just plug into something, then you're like, okay, we can do, you know, IP verification or endpoint verification. We can stick them in a VLAN. We don't have to worry about somebody like me plugging into your switch somewhere. But the question that this gentleman had was the one that really intrigued me. As a doctor, you have a lot of say over what products you buy. But as a network engineer, you probably don't have a whole lot of say about, you know, what is the network infrastructure behind that hospital, who's securing those endpoints, what does that security team do as far as penetration analysis and determining what ports to secure or lock down or disable, like in patient rooms, for example. So.
Oh my gosh, that's an awesome question. So the difficulty in securing hospital infrastructure in many cases is that devices need to move around. And so VLAN network segmentation is very difficult, and it has a wide physical area to it. Certainly, all of these things that you mentioned, the SSL, all this VLAN segmentation, just proper IT infrastructure, making sure that you can't do switch spoofing, double tagging, all that stuff. That's going to be an integral part to doing this. I think that the reason why this issue persists is that hospitals don't take the time, and they don't trust penetration testers. So you might have an IT staff, they might not be completely competent, and the hospital doesn't want to let somebody in to go and mess with machines that might be operating in an emergency room. Go and buzz them.
And I think it's also important to note, too, that in many cases it's just an issue of pure manpower. The Congressional Health and Human Services Task Force on Cybersecurity that was convened and released a report last year found that over 80% of hospitals across the country don't even have a single full-time IT security professional. And I think that when it comes to discussions like this, we often think of the Mayos of the world and the Kaisers of the world, but the reality is that a majority of healthcare delivery organizations across the country could really use a lot of help in that end. And so a lot of this is very constrained resources and razor-thin healthcare margins.
We have 2 minutes left. Of course, great question.
This is a build-on question for earlier. We talked about physician influence on equipment that's purchased. But in non-physician-owned practices, we see administration taking the advice of the practitioners and then making a decision based on ROI. How do we better use practitioners and of both medicine and security to properly influence the administrators in language that they understand to actually require in RFPs, RFIs, RFQs to these vendors, hey, show me your due diligence that you've made these things. Clearly in interoperability requirements, they have to support insecure protocols because that's what's spoken, but to come in and say, here's how we attack the problem and baking security into the procurement process. Well, complex question, I understand.
So, that's a fantastic question and probably one that we can't dig into with a couple of minutes left. I'm not sure if this is allowed, but as kind of a cross plug, tomorrow at DEF CON, we're going to do our annual Do No Harm talk, 7 p.m. And that is something where we get together a bunch of different stakeholders, an amazing group of people, security researchers, doctors like Suzanne Schwartz from the FDA, and we address exactly those type of questions. And so I think people who are interested in those type of conversations, we're going to have a really sustained, really in-depth, really good conversation. Please come over and check that out.
Just very quickly, what are your thoughts as physicians and security researchers about keeping these more vital medical devices offline?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Who are you with?
I'm with GE Healthcare.
Ah, okay. Okay, we'll just say this. It's incredibly important, we believe, to have security researcher ecosystem looking at these devices. We also think that there are probably bad actors out there that want to drop 0 days on medical devices and present them at conferences. And that's probably a bad idea. We're a fan of coordinated disclosure, but we want coordinated disclosure in the healthcare device industry to mature, and we don't want to be threatened with lawsuits and have lawyers call us all the time because we bought a device of yours off of eBay and ended up, having an issue. Not for GE, but just generally speaking.
No, yeah, I think we may be misunderstanding my question.
I might be able to address the idea of unplugging the Ethernet.
I'm talking about having hospitals maybe changing the industry where we supply, any vendor supplies medical devices, but we have them offline. They're not on the hospital infrastructure. So you'll still have hospital computers on the hospital networks, but anything vital, any medical device that's vital like that, or any medical device like an X-ray or something that does, for heart surgeries, anything like that, OR, keep those imperative medical devices that can impact patient safety, keep those off the network.
I don't think that we're complete Luddites with the idea of connected medical devices, because there are a lot of advances both in the quality of care we can deliver and patient safety. Infusion pumps with drug libraries that update for safe dosages, pacemakers that are able to send telemetry data to doctors so they can pick up on things much sooner. We don't want to throw away those amazing benefits. Yeah. Just echoing Christian, I just think there needs to be a much more cohesive and collaborative discussion.
Yeah, this can get pretty complex pretty quick, so I'll leave it there because I know you guys are out of time, but
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.